Not going to lie, when I think of How I Met Your Mother, the word romance isn't necessarily the one that comes to mind. I watch the show for the occasional funny moments, the shenanigans of the McLaren Five, and the questionable choices that some of these characters make. Plus, my incessant need to find out how exactly Ted met his children's damn mother. I am only 4 seasons through so far, and I am still baffled that we haven't even caught a whiff of this woman yet. But anyway, as I was saying, when I think of How I Met Your Mother, I don't really consider the romantic aspects of the show because so far I haven't really found any episodes that made me swoon or swept me off my feet until I watched season 4, episode 13, titled 3 Days of Snow. And right there, in the mundane moment of a meetup at an airport, I found myself crying and also found the thought solidifying in my head that truly Marshall and Lily do have a relationship that makes their romance one that is really heartfelt. And also, the fact that we can't talk about their romance without also pointing out the fact that their friends have always been an important part of their love story. Of course, before I get into any of that, I would like to first apologize for the uber long break I've taken from my How I Met Your Mother video series. I caught a really nasty flu that had laid me out for almost an entire month, and I'm only just recovering. Gods, I hate falling ill, but yes, my apologies for the long break. And whilst I'm at it, I would also like to say a big thank you to everyone who reached out to check up on me whilst I was recovering. Thank you so much for the care. And a big thank you as well to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, maybe even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. Now, before I yap all about the episode that I consider arguably one of the most romantic and heartfelt episodes of the show so far, one of my absolute favorite. A quick intro for those who might be finding my channel for the first time or just stumbling on this video series of mine. Hello, I'm Noria, and welcome to my How I Met Your Mother video series, where I'm currently documenting my first time ever watch of the show while sharing my thoughts as I go along in a stream of consciousness style analysis where I talk about these characters and their choices, try to analyze their behavior and make guesses about how events might play off in the future based off of my thoughts on how the story is progressing and what I learn about these characters with every new episode I watch. As such, I will like to reiterate that this really is my first time watching the show, and I have so far been able to stay away from all discussions as it pertains to How I Met Your Mother and its characters. So, what you are in fact getting really is a blind reaction of a series that finished airing years ago. And from what I have been able to gather, you all have enjoyed watching me take in this show and the characters as I guess my way in the dark about how things might play out or have played out. And as such, I would like to ask that you please continue to abstain from dropping any spoilers in the comments. I appreciate the work you all have put in so far in keeping things spoiler free for me. Thank you. If you do want to say something that addresses a point I made, but which veers into spoiler territory, just give the spoilers ahead warning, followed by a bunch of asterisks so I don't accidentally get spoiled while I'm scrolling by the comments. And so I can ignore that particular comment, whilst other subscribers or non subscribers who are watching my videos can interact with your comments and you all can chat about how right or wrong I am and what I successfully noticed or didn't notice. And for those who are keeping track, like I said earlier, I have currently watched up to How I Met Your Mother season 4 episode 13. Plus, if this is your first time stumbling on one of these videos, kindly know that I do have a format where I split said video into 3 parts: the intro, the synopsis, and then finally my thoughts. As such, I have included timestamps to help you navigate this video as you so choose. And with that said, How I Met Your Mother season 4 episode 13, titled 3 Days of Snow, kicks off with Ted and Barney being, well, Ted and Barney. In this case, they are chatting up two college girls who are in a band and are making plans on how and when they would meet up. You see, Barney is insistent on there not being an exchange of phone numbers, as that would give room for the girls to potentially cancel on them. And so their plan is simply to have them all show up at McLaren's on the specific agreed upon date. Of course, this is important to note as there is currently a blizzard about to hit New York City, and these two dum-dums have ensured that there will be no way to make any sort of cancellations, which of course then means that when the blizzard hits, they are at McLaren's. Matter of fact, they are the only customers at McLaren, since everyone else has way more sense and are safely ensconced in their homes. Carl wants to lock up since he's a good person and works at the homeless shelter whenever blizzards like this hit New York. Barney and Ted, however, convince him to let them stay on since they are still waiting on the girls. And Carl, who clearly has not been paying enough attention to the shenanigans of these two idiots, decides to trust them. He hands over the keys to the bar, asks that they promise to lock up after they are done, and leaves, thus inadvertently helping to fulfill a dream that Ted and Barney have always had, to own their own bar, which they want to call Puzzles, because everyone will be puzzled as to why their bar is called Puzzles. They are dumbasses, Your Honor. And their one rule is that there would be no last call until the last person is well and truly done and wants to leave. Now, if you have ever worked in a bar or owned one, you would know that this is a terrible idea. People drinking and having fun never want to leave. To make matters even better for them, the girls show up, except the girls show up with the band. They're marching, their school's marching band. The bar is filled with drunk, rowdy college students who make a mess of everything. And to make matters worse, Carl calls to let Ted and Barney know that he's on his way back, which in turn has them trying to send the group out, except they remember their promise to ensure that Puzzles has no last call. And so the party is moved up to Ted's shared apartment with Robin, who thankfully at that moment isn't around. She's with Marshall, and we'll get to that later. Anyway, the band moves upstairs, and whilst there, Ted and Barney agree that owning a bar is a terrible idea. But then they get another terrible brainwave and decide it would be so much better to own a band. This is why you shouldn't drink and make any life decisions, you all. It would 9 times out of 10 be a terrible one. So, yes, they all have a blast, including the band, and Barney is able to complete his party school bingo by having sex with one of the women. Meanwhile, all of this is happening against the backdrop that is Lily and Marshall's traditions, whereby every time she has to fly for a trip and returns back to the city, Marshall picks her up at the airport and Lily brings him a 6-pack of beer from wherever she was, usually a specialty beer. It's been their thing for almost a decade, but now both Marshall and Lily believe that they've outgrown this tradition and so decide to stop it. However, when mentions to Marshall that there is a high possibility that Lily would still bring him a 6-pack anyway, Marshall immediately changes his mind and asks Robin to drive him to the airport in the middle of the blizzard that has just hit the city. Lily, on the other hand, is on the plane on her way back home, and whilst chatting with her fellow passenger, mentions the tradition and Marshall and her's decision to put an end to it. But then the other passenger points out that there is a high potential that Marshall is on his way to pick her up at the airport, and Lily realizes that she absolutely needs to get him the beer before he arrives. So the minute she gets there, she panics about the little time that she has left, but then runs into Ranjit. Remember, Ranjit from the pilot episode, who also shows up, is present to pick up another passenger. But when Ranjit hears about Lily needing to get the 6-pack, is very aware of what that tradition means to her and Marshall, and offers to drive her to a store where they can pick up this novelty brewed beer. And sure enough, they do get the beer, except it doesn't have a funny name and it's in a keg and not a 6-pack. But beggars can be choosers, and especially with the time so tight. And so Lily pays Ranjit extra to have him help her carry the keg into his vehicle. Meanwhile, Robin, who is currently driving Marshall to the airport, is as expected, confused about why Marshall is so insistent on things, and Marshall has to tell her about the importance of traditions in a relationship, especially their relationship, as they are the little ways in which they get to let each other know how much they love the other person. Of course, Robin doesn't really understand this, and Marshall is snarky about her lack of a romance bone, if you will, which then devolves into the two of them arguing, which in turn has Robin packing at the side of the road to demand an apology that Marshall eventually gives her, but not until they are showered in snow by a passing snowplow. After the apology, Robin opens the sunroof of her car and gets rid of some of the snow and then drives off to the airport. They arrive, but unfortunately do not find Lily. And on the other hand, Lily arrives and can't find Marshall. The two of them sit depressed until Robin notices their arrivals and departures and points out to Marshall that Lily has been delayed by the storm and is stuck in Seattle. Marshall realizes that Lily would have called to let him know, and when he checks his messages, sure enough, Lily had called to inform him of the cancellation of a flight during their lunch call, which was yet another tradition that Marshall had let slip away and didn't pay attention to. Her voice message informed him that she would be 2 days late, and so Marshall leaves unsure if he would come back to pick up Lily. And so we catch up to the present day. Turns out that whilst both Marshall and Lily's side of things was happening concurrently on screen, there was the 2 days difference between them. Now, Lily is stuck at the airport with the keg in hand and no Marshall. And just as she sits down all depressed, a marching band starts to play the tune of Old Lang Syne, and Marshall makes his grand entrance. He tells her what he had for lunch, and Lily hands him the bear, after which Marshall realizes to his horror that he would now have to incorporate a marching band into their tradition, which Lily agrees to with a laugh, and they kiss. The end. Now, full disclaimer, there is a possibility that the reason why this particular episode hits me so deep in the feels and reduced me to tears, because yes, I will not hide the fact that I found myself quite teary-eyed at the end of this episode, even though my brain took a while to solidify why I was so affected by it. But as I was saying, there is a possibility that the reason why I was such an emotional wreck is because I was recovering from the flu when I watched it, and I was already feeling emotionally and physically raw as a result. But I honestly don't think that that is the only reason. Instead, I do believe that the episode was so impactful because it really does speak to the core of why Marshall and Lily's relationship works so well, whilst at the same time eating the highlights of what makes an amazing How I Met Your Mother episode. We have the shenanigans of Barney and Ted without it creeping into completely weird territory and questionable consent issues. The gang gets together to be supportive. Ranjit does a cameo appearance. What can I say? We love Ranjit in this house. And Lily and Marshall get to be sappy and in love, but in a way that is just uniquely them. And by uniquely them, I am referring, of course, to the effortless ways in which neither Marshall nor Lily have any shame in revealing just how much they mean to each other, and how it's the little things. It's always been the little things that have been the deciding factor in showing the love and care and affection that they have for each other. I mean, think about it. If we were to look at Marshall and Lily's love languages, I would say that yes, words of affirmation have always been a pretty big deal for them, but also there's the bit with acts of service, which has been quite the pivotal part of their relationship. From the very beginning, when Marshall confirms that Lily has always been present for him. Hell, she's the one who financially supported Marshall through law school. And I know there are people who are about to pull up the fact that she also has a shopping problem and incurred a shit ton of debt, which eventually affected their shared credit score as a couple. But it still doesn't change the fact that Marshall himself does admit that Lily was instrumental in helping him get through law school. And she did all of that whilst living on an elementary school teacher's salary, which we know is not a lot. Plus, if we are still being honest, she did give up her dreams of being an artist to ensure that Marshall was able to achieve his dreams. Like, sure, after that, she did run out to San Francisco and they broke up as a result of that, all of which still resulted in concrete proof that Lily isn't really the artist that she believes herself to be, what with her residency not really paving the way as she had hoped it would. But it still doesn't negate the fact that she did go years without ever giving her own dreams a try, as one of them needed a stable income for Marshall to be able to get through law school. And then, of course, I still can't ever get over season 3, episode 19, when they find out that they need quite the sum of money to fix the slanting floors in the apartment they had purchased. And Lily hoped that she could sell her paintings to cover the cost of them rather than having to sell her clothes. It was Marshall and Ted who showed up for her when she realized that the gay couple she had thought had liked her painting and offered money for it had instead tossed it out because what they wanted instead was the frame for the painting. Marshall and Ted was the one who found out that a veterinarian had picked up the painting and it worked in calming down the dogs that were brought in. And Marshall, therefore, built Lily a website from scratch in order to sell her paintings to other vets in the area, just affirming her belief in her work and also getting her money. Those instances are the big things, big decisions where we see Marshall and Lily come through for one another. And whilst I consider them good moments, I think the swoon worthy ones are the little moments of tradition that Marshall and Lily have walked into their relationship so they get to show each other how they truly feel and how the other person matters to them. That's what makes their relationship truly shine, even as it continues to stay strong. It's the one reason why I personally, even with the amount of seasons that we are getting, I have no doubt whatsoever that these two kids, Marshall and Lily, will be together at the end, forever strong, because of the traditions they have built and how much work and effort that they put in into maintaining them. And we see this clearly in the episode 3 Days of Snow. There is a tradition where they agree to tell each other what they had for lunch, which might seem silly to some people, but made me smile like a loon because it says so much about their relationship. That is a way for them to let the other person know how much they love them by confirming that even in the little things, the mundane activity of eating lunch, no matter how small or inconsequential it might have been, they kept it in mind so that when they are reunited at the end of the day, they get to tell the other person what they ate to prove that even whilst they were busy and getting work done, their partner wasn't far from their minds. Marshall was thinking of Lily whilst he had his lunch, and Lily was thinking of Marshall while she had hers. It's sweet. What is sweeter though is the tradition of Marshall picking up Lily from the airport whilst Lily meets him with a six-pack beer from wherever she's visited. I think it speaks to the few moments of maturity that we get within the show, that they acknowledge that after having maintained such a tradition for the past decade, it's become somewhat tedious for them to execute. Hence why they both gave the excuse of their relationship having matured, and so therefore some of these traditions have to mature alongside them. But like I said earlier in the video, part of what makes this episode for me quite heartwarming and sweet is the fact that Marshall and Lily's traditions is one that has become so ingrained in their personal lives that even their friends and acquaintances are aware of it and have grown to expect it. And so when it seemed like they are about to put an end to it, you had Ted, the stranger on the plane, with Lily, Robin, and even Ranjit come through in ensuring that these traditions don't die. It's a great way to affirm that even with long term relationships, it's easy to let the little things fall to the wayside. We get the confirmation of this with Marshall having ignored their lunch tradition, which meant that he wasn't able to pick up Lily's call, and that is why he had no idea that her flight was delayed. It's so incredibly easy to lose sight of what makes your relationship work, what makes it strong, and that is why it is important to have built a community that understands why you maintain these traditions and can give you the kick in the ass to follow through with them, even when you're considering not doing so. It's one of the rare moments of true friendship that I've gotten to see in the show so far, and I really enjoyed it. It's such a great touch as well that the show has Robin, the one friend within the group who has always been depicted as the least romantic. And before you say, oh, Noria, isn't that meant to be Barney? They've shown instances where Barney has been romantic, right? Especially since he started catching feelings for Robin. So, anyway, Robin, who in the group has been depicted as being the least romantic, who at the start, when she was driving Marshall to the airport, couldn't really fathom the why of Marshall's behavior, to have her realize just how important this is and how romance can still shine through, even with something as mundane as maintaining a tradition of picking up a loved one from the airport. To have Robin be the one who drives Marshall as she comes to that realization and truth, it's such a great touch, a great way for the show to actually show us how these friends are slowly changing. I know. I tend to be a hard ass about this series because of some of the questionable decisions and choices, and also Ted. But at the same time, I can admit that this was a great way for How I Met Your Mother to let us see that being within the orbit of Marshall and Lily and their open love for each other is something that has been slowly influencing their friends. I mean, Barney flew all the way to San Francisco in order to convince Lily to come back. And then you have Robin, who otherwise might never have come around to the romance present in that, which, it's a great way to hint to the audience that her character is coming around towards romance in a way that would make her next relationship benefit immensely from that. I wonder if there's going to be a little part of Ted who would realize that maybe Robin could have been is one at the end of the day if only he hadn't been in such a rush, if only he had, I don't know, waited. Because the Robin we get to see now is one that I personally think is slowly becoming more open to love and romance compared to the Robin that Ted dated back at the end of season one and most of season two. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass and she would revert back to her old ways. Maybe all of this is wishful thinking, but I don't know. I see the threads of character development there. But yes, back to Marshall and Lily. It is clear that they have the central position in their group as the heart of said group. And so having the rest of the crew all come through to help them maintain an old tradition whilst creating a new one, which in turn does speak to the maturity of their relationship and also helps ease the sameness that usually arises from repeating an action over and over again. I think it's an interesting choice because with Robin, Marshall gets to make it to the airport on time. With Ranjit, Lily gets to buy the beer, which are the very basis of their old tradition. And with Ted and Barney, Marshall gets to inject something new into the mix that elevates their relationship with a marching band and some good old Auld Lang Syne. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness here for old lang syne. Sorry, Old Lang Syne is one of my absolute favorite holiday carols. I cannot help myself. I also think it contributed heavily to the tears and love I have for this episode and why I enjoyed it so much. But as I was saying, we get to see that the old tradition is maintained. And even though Marshall is horrified at the realization that now there is a new twist to the tradition and he would have to bring a marching band every time to welcome Lily, it's still something that is sweet and thoughtful and ultimately theirs that he will come through with because that is what they do. That's who they are. And I don't know about you, but it's sweet. It's romantic. It's quintessential Marshall and Lily. And it definitely is a How I Met Your Mother episode that ranks on my favorite list for sure. And considering the fact that the last episode I made a video about was The Naked Man, let's just say 3 days of snow washed the taste of that right out of my mouth. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others could find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might potentially be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you on Monday with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.